What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome into another episode of the Triple Play Fantasy Football Show, a proud member of Fantasy Points and the Fantasy Points Media Group. Right now, you can use code TriplePlay22 and you'll receive 10% off your subscription to Fantasy Points. And while you're there, you can check out the most recent podcast with Graham Barfield and Edwin Porras discussing the state of injured players. And you can also check out the Hard Count, which premiered with Wes Huber this week, where he debunks some fantasy football narratives ahead of your drafts. All that and more with, of course, all the great tools over at fantasypoints.com. D-Mendy here, joined, of course, by the Doc, Brad Stradamus, and potentially Johnny Foosball if his computer works on his restart. I think he's retrying for a third time now, but otherwise, we got the rest of the crew here. Doc and Brad. Fellas, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, man. I mean, I got to say, now that you keep using portrait mode and blurring out the background, I'm a little jealous.
You can do it yourself. It's not like I'm entitled to it.
No, you are entitled, David.
Brad, how you doing, man?
Can't complain, man. I'm excited to talk some football.
That's right. And Brad kind of put the narrative out there. We're talking some football, the AFC West today, and we usually save this one for last, but I said, you know what, this division is so good, this should not be the last one we talk about. We got to put the AFC West in the forefront today. There was a great article by Bill Barnwell on ESPN that basically he went through tons of data, and this is potentially the best quarterback division in the history of football between Pat Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, and Derek Carr. And if you haven't checked out that article, it's pretty.
I know it felt like that just, by the names that we're talking about, but what's the data that he looked at?
I have to look the article up. He used, I want to say it was similar to like a QBR, but like a more advanced. It was, I have to look up what the exact, he used a pretty good metric for it, but he used those numbers and he compared it, I think, over the last 50 years. And
so he just looked at like overall quarterback play pretty much.
Yeah. And you got kind of the numbers for every quarterback, every division, and one through four, according to his data that you can tell if you read the article, how thoroughly he researched this article.
He's good. I like Bill Barnwell.
Yeah. It's basically when he says through all that, this is the best. That's why I'm going to run with that narrative that this is definitely the best all time. It's going to be a great division. I think every game should be on national TV. But I'm not biased or anything. So let's, of course, start out here. We'll talk about the rookies first. And Brad, you had the Los Angeles Chargers.
I did.
And who are some rookies that they took this past draft that we should talk about on the offensive side of the ball?
So the only potentially fantasy relevant rookie they drafted is Isaiah Spiller. He's currently listed as the second string running back on the ESPN behind Eckler. He was drafted in the 4th round and would likely be a third down back, and it'll take a while for him to learn pass protections better than Kelly and Roundtree. So I'd probably stay away from him in redrafts, but Dynasty Leagues is a slightly different story, especially since Eckler's had some durability issues in the past. But, Spiller's slow. He runs a 4.7, which was 20th percentile in his class. He had a 10% target share in college, which is actually really good. That's 75th percentile in his class. So in PPR leagues, in Dynasty, he could be pretty valuable as that third down back. But I think you'd need to see an Eckler injury for him to touch the field in a relevant manner. So he's honestly not even in my top 5 of favorite, Dynasty rookie running backs. But he's got, a great college career, and he's going to have the opportunity for touches if Eckler were to go down. But right now, I'd kind of stay away.
Isaiah Spiller was somebody who early on in the draft process, he was my favorite running back in this class ahead of Breece Hall and Ken Walker. Obviously, as the offseason went on, the workouts started going on, he slipped, of course, the speed. But he's somebody, I think, in a zone blocking scheme.
4.7, that's slower than some linebackers now, man.
Yeah, I'd like to hope that he's going to prove some people wrong when he gets on the field, and that, I'm thinking of guys like Kareem Hunt, who I think ran like 4.6. And, on the field, you can see what he does, which, by the way, if you haven't checked out Kareem Hunt video that's on the Triple Play YouTube channel, Brad did a great job breaking that down. It's called what? Hunting something?
I don't know. Yeah. Hunting for buys on the Cleveland Browns or something like that.
Very cleverly titled by Brad. But he is somebody that can make defenders miss. He's very patient, lets his blockers set up. Good. He's got great contact balance, average speed, but also has capabilities in the receiving game. And is it crazy to say that he's the best backup running back that Eckler's played with since Melvin Gordon? Or I guess they were 1A, 1B with Melvin Gordon there. But over the last 2 seasons,
I think that is crazy, especially since we haven't seen him play yet. I mean, Justin Jackson was really good. Melvin Gordon was really good. I think
I'm saying since Melvin Gordon.
Yeah. And even, just Justin Jackson, what he was able to do while Eckler was out, over the past, 2 or 3 years has been pretty special.
I was going to say the one game that he started last year, he had 34.2 fantasy points, but he's been largely inefficient, which is why I think that they got Spiller. I mean, Brad, I think you're right that he's not a dynasty top running back because you have to expect an injury, but his upside as a handcuff, I'd say is up there because Chargers could easily have a top 3 offense in football.
He's built to take the load. He's built to be a starting running back. I just don't think he's going to have that opportunity.
I think he's going to be somebody. I don't want to overemphasize this. I think he could be a league winner this year, and he's somebody that's not. Oh yeah, I don't think
that's David's first league winner drop.
But I mean, their thing is there's so many backup running backs like Alexander Madison. If Dalvin Cook goes down, like you have an RB1, right?
Yep.
But he's one of the ones that won't be talked about very much. That if you use a end of draft pick on him, Eckler is not exactly durable as he's shown most of his career. So he's somebody I think Spiller would step in and get a very large workload for that team, a very explosive offense. And he's a very effective runner as he showed in college. I think people will be down with him with the workout metrics. So
but
he's somebody.
Joshua Kelly was getting a lot of snaps last year and he did really well. He's not a shoo-in for second string.
He's not, but I think over time he's the best runner. And I will plug the 33rd team really quick because I do some work with them. And there's a connection there. They said they like Larry Roundtree a lot more than Kelly, at least as it stands today, but they think he's a better blocker. They like him in pass protection, not necessarily as much in the run game.
It was going to take Spiller time to get better than Kelly and Roundtree in pass protection because he'd only play third down right now anyway. So I really don't. A lot would have to happen for Spiller to kind of get loose and be a league winner in my eyes. But I see what you're saying. Like he definitely has shown in college that he's capable of being a starting running back. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Doc, you had the Broncos, and we'll start with their draft class, but they have a lot to talk about once we get to their actual players. So who should we learn about from their draft class here?
So they took 2 rookies on the offensive side of the ball. The first is Greg Dulcich, tight end from UCLA in round 3. And the more I was researching him, the more I like him. I think everybody's going with Albert O because he's the starting tight end and he could get touchdowns. And I mean, that's what you need if you don't get a top tier tight end, but he only caught 33 passes last year. He's 6'5", 258 and ran a 4.9. So I think he's more of a blocker. But with Dulcich, his last 2 years in college averaged 18 yards per catch, 10 touchdowns, ran a 4.7. And rumor is he's been turning heads at OTA. So I think what the Broncos said is he's going to help stretch the field. And speaking of stretching the field, that's the second rookie they took, Montrell Washington out of Samford, a burner that ran a 4.38. And I think that's kind of the compliment they need at the third receiver. Judy's going to be in the slot. Cortland Sutton's a 6'4" guy that you'll throw it up to, but they don't have anybody that's going to stretch the field and throw the deep ball like Russ likes to do.
Yeah, that's a good point there. I'll cover the Raiders really quickly because Johnny has the Raiders, but obviously, again, he can't make it because with his computer troubles. So I will touch on, they took Britton Brown in the 7th round, a running back out of UCLA. I don't expect him to be much of a factor, but who could be a big factor this year for the Raiders is Amir White, the running back out of Georgia, nicknamed Zeus, which already is pretty awesome. But the big thing here is Josh Jacobs did not have his 5th-year option picked up. So I don't necessarily think they're tying themselves with Josh Jacobs going forward. There is Kenyon Drake there. Brandon Bolden.
Does that seem strange to you?
No, I think he's, to me, maybe a little bit of above average running back and somebody that I think we've learned how bad it is to pay running backs right now, right? Like you see what happens when the elite ones are getting paid and it's turning out within a year or two how bad those contracts look. So
Yeah.
He's not a game changer, and I think the Raiders would rather use that money elsewhere, personally. But
plus the current regime didn't select Josh Jacobs.
That's true.
That's
I
true.
mean, they have Kenyon Drake, who's coming off, I believe it was a fractured ankle. I have to double check that. Brandon Bolden, who's a straight pretty much receiving back, and Amir Abdullah, who might not be with the team once all the cuts are made in training camp. But he's 6 foot, 215 pounds. He's a power running back with speed, a 4.49 at the draft. The pass blocking will need to get better, but I think Amir White is a sneaky ad for people that are drafting. I think I would not be shocked to see him getting more work this season, I think, than people realize. I don't think he's a strict backup to Jacobs.
I like that call.
So keep his name on your radar. Obviously, in Dynasty Leagues, he'll be drafted, but in redraft, if you draft Josh Jacobs, this is the guy you want to probably handcuff him with, I would think. And then I had the Chiefs, my squad. The running back that you might not know that they took is Isaiah Pacheco from Rutgers, 7th round pick. I would have actually said he might be a big sleeper this year, but I'm concerned about him making the roster with them bringing Jerick McKinnon back as of yesterday and re-signing him. So I'm not sure he gets a spot, but it is kind of cool to note that he had the fastest running back time at the combine at 4.37, and somebody that was potentially talked about as getting some snaps for this team, if things didn't work out. But
he also wasn't that great at Rutgers. I watched a lot of him in college, and he wasn't like, he'll have games where he's like, wow, who is this guy? And then he'll have games. I think he literally had a game where he had like 25 carries and 12 yards.
Yeah. So I don't think at this point, like Brad said, he maybe not too skilled. I don't know if he'll make the roster at this point, but the player we have to talk about, I'm so excited about, and I'm trying to draft anywhere that I can this year. You can check out a great video of him on the Triple Play YouTube channel from our guy, Brad. Wide receiver Skye Moore from Western Michigan in the 2nd round. And he's somebody that you have to look right now. The Chiefs are rebuilding the receiver position. Traded Tyreek Hill, lost to Marcus Robinson, and lost Byron Pringle. So 3 of their top 4 receivers last year are gone. Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdes-Scantling are now in the fold here. We'll get to the receiver room in general in a second. But Moore led all major college receivers last year with catches and yards on slant routes. 23 catches and 433 yards on slant routes. Total on
and target share.
And target share. He had 95 receptions for 1,292 yards, which is 13.6 yards per reception, and 10 touchdowns in 12 games. And he ranked first in FBS last year, 26 missed tackles. He's somebody that I think is going to win off the line, especially when he's playing in the slot consistently. He's got strong hands. He had 9 contested catches last year, despite being under 6 feet, and somebody that should be able to produce anywhere on the field. I think he's somebody that's may not start out the year as the go-to guy for Kansas City, but if you were to tell me like he kind of has like an Amon-Ra St. Brown type of breakout at the end of the year, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked to see him from like week 12 or week 13 be somebody that is a top 12 wide receiver from that point on. Brad, you did a breakdown of Skye Moore. Is he somebody that you think people could really be trusting as a wide receiver too, maybe by the end of the season?
Absolutely. And I think the beauty of Skye Moore is that even the hype that he does have, it's not really moving his ADP. You're going to draft him, in the middle to late rounds, and he could actually be starting for you by the end of the year. The guy led the league in drop rate. He's pretty much a possession receiver. He catches the ball whenever it's thrown to him, and he just does not drop it. And he's also great in deep routes. He's great in slants. Pretty much everything that the Chiefs are going to have something like 370 targets that they're missing from last year. And that's going to go to Juju. That's going to go to Moore. That's going to go to MVS. But in terms of what Skye Moore can do, in terms of his skill set, he's going to have all the ability in the world to just really, truly be a number 1 receiver. And I don't know that it'll happen consistently every week. Rookies kind of have a tough time in Andy Reid's system. But overall, I think he's going to have, single weeks where he's got like 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. And then he'll have a week where he has 5 catches and 50 yards. But Above all, I think he's going to be a receiver for the future for this team, and I think it's a great pick by the Chiefs. They're lucky he fell to him.
Mm-hmm. Juju Smith-Schuster is on a 1-year deal for those that don't remember. MVS is signed to a few years. I forget if it's 2 or 3, but he's somebody that's going to be with them for a long time. So him wanting to build that chemistry with him is something that can't go unnoticed and not talked about. If I asked you guys today, if you had to put your bank account on it, who leads the Chiefs, the wide receiver core? Who leads the Chiefs wide receiver core in fantasy points in 2022? You would say Eric.
Go Skye Moore because I don't think Juju's going to stay healthy.
Brad?
I'm going to go Juju because I think he's going to be a big red zone target for Pat Mahomes.
I'm going to go, I said Skye Moore on Twitter the other day, but I'm starting to lean MVS because I was hearing reports today that they're starting to have a rapport together, and Mahomes likes the deep ball. And I think just the fact that MVS is going to have some weeks where he has like 5 for 120 and 2 touchdowns. I think that those big games might give him the edge over the other guys.
But that's like an example of what we're talking about, right? Like we're asking 3 people what they think of the Chiefs wide receivers, and we gave 3 different receivers. So,
and that means you take the lowest one in ADP, so you get the best value.
You know what? Exactly. Well, you know what? I don't like usually going right back to me, but since we're talking about their wide receivers, does that mean Pat Mahomes has his second best season of his career besides maybe the 50 touchdown season? Because QB1,
I think he has the worst year of his career.
Well, let's get to that in a second then. QB1 his first year, QB7 his second year, and then he's been QB4 each of the last 2 years. In his first full 4 seasons, he's had a 66% completion percentage or higher every year. And that could go up higher with less downfield shots to Tyreek that he tries to get to him, obviously with that being a big part of Hill's game. And this is arguably the best receiving core he's ever played with. And I think instead of finding the pressure to get the ball to Tyreek Hill and Kelsey, I think he's going to have a lot of receivers that can win their matchups more consistently. I think this, outside the QB1 year, I would not be shocked to see him have his best year. Doc, you are against that theory.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about, Tyreek Hill is gone. Think about how much yak Tyreek Hill got him. Think about the play against Buffalo where he literally does a drag across the middle and then extends it. And we're talking about 3 new wide receivers that he has to build rapport with. It's easy to do it in the offseason, but when it's actually in-game adjustments, I think Tyreek Hill has been underutilized or been underappreciated. I think he's the most talented receiver in football, and Mahomes is really going to miss that.
What do you think, Brad?
I have him as my QB5 on the year, so I don't think this will be his best year ever. But I think we're going to see a lot of what we've seen from his entire career. He's pretty dependable. He's going to throw for a lot of yards. He's going to throw for a lot of touchdowns. And he'll have his share of interceptions this year, too, with communication issues and getting on the rapport with new wide receivers. But I do think you're right. This is probably the best batch of receivers that he's ever had. But I think it lacks go-to targets where he's got, a safety blanket. He can't just go find Hill. He can't just, go find. He'll probably still be able to go find Kelsey, and it'll be a great year for him. But in terms of expecting his best every year, I don't think that's there for him.
Yeah, I want to shout out my buddy Alex Caruso, who put this out the other day and talking about just Juju's just average depth of target and his basically what he his pull this up. Let's see. Juju's yards per route run by year. 2017 2.17, 2018 2.08, 2019 1.49, 2020 1.29, and then this past season 0.88.
Yeah.
He's somebody I'm very interested to see what he does with Mahomes at quarterback and how he's able to go back to being more of a vertical threat, somebody that I think Mahomes will be able to gel with in that area.
I agree.
So we talked about the receivers, running backs for the Chiefs, CEH Rojo. CEH, one of the worst explosive runners in the league, but we just found out that he had his
McKinnon.
They have McKinnon and Rojo, but CEH, they just reported had his gallbladder removed before last season, and it was not talked about at all. And that could have been maybe something that hampered him, but did not look good. RB 46, 6 total touchdowns. But Rojo is kind of intriguing to me. Somebody with near 5 yards per carry average and could be the first and second down runner on this team. Is Rojo somebody that you guys could see yourselves drafting since he's the lower ADP of the two guys?
Of course. I think the main issue with him in Tampa Bay was he had a fumbling problem, and that doesn't sit well with Bruce Arians, and that's why they brought in Fournette. I mean, if Fournette doesn't get cut by the Jags, they're likely rolling with Rojo, but they got a good talent for cheap. I think Andy Reid will hopefully give him a little bit of a longer leash, because what we've seen is Bruce Arians, when he was the coach of Tampa, sometimes was opinionated, and once he had a certain mindset about you, that it was really hard to get out of the doghouse. So I love the value on Rojo.
Yeah.
I'll probably be fading that backfield entirely. You look at what they did in the playoffs, where they have CEH, but McKinnon gets going and he's the hot hand, and they keep him and let him cook. And I think it might be something like that during the regular season too, where if McKinnon's hot, they're going to let him cook. If Rojo's hot, they're going to let him cook. If CEH is hot, they're going to let him cook. In which case, I'll just maybe if one of them's on the waiver wire, I'll pick them up, but in terms of drafting them, I'll probably avoid it.
I compared on Twitter. I got a lot of backlash for it, but then I had to put context to it. I think Rojo is this year's James Conner in the sense of somebody you have.
Yeah, I remember you did get a lot of backlash for it.
It's an ambiguous backfield, right? We saw last year with James Conner and Chase Edmonds, and Chase Edmonds was the running back people coveted, and James Conner was the guy that fell after him. People weren't talking about him as much. I think CEH is the one people would think would be the biggest beneficiary in this backfield, but Rojo's going after him. And I think he could be the back in this backfield that you get at a better value as the second running back. So that's where I compared them in that sense. Do I think he'll be a top 5 running back like James Conner or top 10? No. I do think that Ronald Jones could be an RB2 this year, and he'll be the best running back for the Chiefs. So just take that as you will. And the last thing with the Chiefs, Travis Kelsey, stud, been a top. He was actually, for the first time in 6 years, not the number 1 tight end last year. He was the tight end 2.
Pretty crazy.
But one of only 6 tight ends to get over 100 targets last year in 17 games. So it's only going to go up his targets most likely. So I think at worst he should be your tight end 2 in redraft.
I agree.
So that's it for the Chiefs. Brad, let's go back to the Chargers. Let's talk about their skill position players and just your thoughts on just the overall collection of talent here.
Yeah, so Justin Herbert is my QB6. I've got him after Patrick Mahomes. He's got pretty much the same weapons as last year when he finished QB2. So I may actually be low on him this year, but you've got to expect some sort of regression down from 5,000 yards passing and 38 touchdowns. Maybe not though. We'll see. Regardless, you're going to be happy with him every week if you draft him. He's not the type to put up big weeks and then duds. He's pretty much as consistent as they come. And this is a high-flying offense that goes forward on 4th downs. They want points. They don't care about risk. That's great for fantasy. At running back, I have Eckler as my RB3. I think he'll have tons of volume, even more than he had last year, and he had 273 touches last year. He gets targets through the air. He was actually only second to Najee Harris in terms of running back target share. And the team is always in the red zone, so he'll get high-value touches on the ground as well. He was RB2 last year, and I expect a similar performance this year. The only thing to fear with Eckler is injuries, but, he's not really in the Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley territory where you're scared to draft him. So, and he's also a friend of the pod, so that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
At wide receiver, they kind of have an embarrassment of riches. The newly paid Mike Williams finished the year wide receiver 9 last year, and I actually have him outside of my top 24 this year. I think we were dealing with a contract year outlier from him last year, and I don't think he's a top 10 receiver, and neither does he, and neither do the Chargers, which is why he took the $60 million deal instead of the top flight numbers that top wide receivers are getting right now. His best finish before last season was wide receiver 20, and I think it's safe to say that's his ceiling. Keenan Allen is the receiver to own of the duo. He's my wide receiver 10 this year. He finished 13 last year, and he finished 18, 11, 14, and 3 the 4 years prior. So he's consistent. He's going to have incredibly solid QB play. He had over 100 targets in 4 of the past 5 seasons. And the one season he didn't have 100 targets, he had 97. So you know where you're getting with him. He's currently got an ADP in the late 2nd, early 3rd round. And while I think that's about right for him, the consensus wide receiver 12 on him on Fantasy Pros is also probably about right as well. So There's also some late to middle round flyers that you could look at for wide receivers. Joshua Palmer and Jalen Guyton. From the simple fact that, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams aren't going to combine for Herbert's 5,000 yards themselves. There's going to be games and matchups where it makes sense to pick up one of those guys because Williams and Allen are going to go against the top, corner in the league. And that's when Guyton or Palmer might get some looks. So I think the wide receivers that's pretty much the fantasy diamond of this group. At tight end, they picked up Gerald Everett. He's currently the consensus TE24. That's a volatile position. I believe from weeks 10 through 16, he was actually TE9 last year with Russell Wilson back from injury. So we know he's got some good games in him. It's just I wouldn't count on him. He's somebody I'd rather pick up on waivers than draft. And then they have also got, Trey McKitty and some other guys that, you just don't know what you're going to get from them in the tight end spot. So I kind of avoid that in terms of drafting. I'd look on the waiver wire.
Would you be surprised, Brad, if Mike Williams became the number one wide receiver this year for this offense?
100%. I don't think he's that guy. The Chargers don't think he's that guy. He's just a great compliment to Keenan Allen.
He makes the toughest catches.
He does. And it's a guy like that who makes the toughest catches. It's hard to expect him to have consistency. That's kind of, he has outlier performances, but he's not going to be the guy you can count on for 10 catches, 100 yards each week like Keenan Allen is.
All right, fair enough. Doc, let's go to the Broncos. I know there's a lot to break down here with them, so I want to give you the floor.
Yeah, so I put this out on our Twitter today, and in my rankings, Russell Wilson's my QB2. And I mean, David, you had him as your QB1 last year, but the Seahawks have never really let Russ cook, and everybody says, well, when he starts throwing more, that's when the inefficiency comes in. But as somebody that's a fan of the NFC West, the offensive line is poor, and there's not a lot of continuity. I think Russell Wilson was the glue that held the Seahawks together. They've made a lot of poor decisions in the front office. His career high in pass attempts is 558. That was 7th in 2020. He's averaged 481 per season, and in a 16-game season, that would rate as QB 18, which is around where Ryan Tannehill is. He's going to have a great trio of wide receivers with Jerry Jeudy, assuming no suspension, Courtland Sutton, and Tim Patrick. It's going to be a high-powered division. I think there's going to be a lot of scoring. As David mentioned, it's probably the best division for quarterbacks all time. 65% completion for his career. The Broncos didn't give up that much draft capital so that it wouldn't put the ball in his hands. And they have great running backs that can catch as well, especially with Melvin Gordon, who had 28 receptions last year. But the rushing floor of Russell Wilson as well. And the lowest he's had for a season is 259, which is 17 per game. He's more in that 400 to 500 per year rushing. So like I said, quarterback 2 for me. And the fact that he's QB, I think 10 or 11 right now, I think is great value. I'll start with Javontay Williams. I think I have him lower than most. The split was closer than most people realize. 246 touches to Melvin Gordon's 231 last year. They brought Melvin Gordon back. I don't think there's going to be a huge discrepancy. There was 4.4 yards per carry he had, and I think they're going to kind of keep him in that ballpark to keep him fresh. The running backs, there were 16 rushing touchdowns last year as opposed to 20 passing touchdowns. I think that gets a little bit more evenly distributed, and I think Melvin Gordon is the better value to have amongst these running backs. He's had double-digit touchdowns every year except one besides his rookie season, and he had 9. So you can bank on him hopefully being the goal line back again. Jerry Jeudy, I want to wait till the legal situation plays out. I will say it's a little bit alarming that he had 0 touchdowns last year. He had 3 targets within the 20, so you'd like to see that get a little bit better. And just for reference, that's the same amount as Tyson Williams and 1 less than Robert Tonyan, who played in 8 games with a torn ACL. So you hope that he gets a little bit more in the red zone. But I think Courtland Sutton is going to have a bounce-back season. 2nd year removed from a torn ACL. He had some early wide receiver 1 weeks, 9 for 159 week 2, 7 for 120 week 3. I think, once again, just the inconsistency at quarterback play. There were 7 games he had under 5 targets. And it doesn't matter the separation you're getting if you don't have someone mobile or someone with accuracy. They had Teddy Bridgewater, Drew Lock, Brandon Allen throwing him the ball. You're not going to get good looks. And Tim Patrick, a good compliment, wide receiver 66. I kind of think of it as the Lions from 3 or 4 years ago when they had Marvin Jones, Golden Tate. But Kenny Golladay was the third wide receiver when they ran trips, and you get him in the 10th, 11th round. That's what I think Tim Patrick is.
Well, good breakdown there. I also maybe keep an eye on KJ Hamler, who I think tried to put his locker near Russell Wilson's, and our buddy Jacoby Ford called him out off air a few years ago and said he's somebody that deserves a shot and somebody that is going to impress when he does get a good chance. So could be a good deep threat for Russell Wilson, who loves to throw that deep ball.
And to be fair, I don't think anybody is going to be an elite wide receiver one. I think everybody's going to take turns having their week, kind of like what we saw with the Bucs last season, where it would be an Evans week and a Godwin week.
So
Gronk gets 2 touchdowns.
So what's the highest receiver ranked in this offense? Is he wide receiver 13, wide receiver 12? Like you don't have to even say which one you think it is. Like, what is the ceiling for one of the receivers?
I'd say a high-end wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 weeks.
Okay, so like a wide receiver 13, 14-ish.
Yes.
Okay.
But somebody like a Tyler Lockett that you're playing each week, that can be a low-end wide receiver 2 at its worst, but can be a top 5 wide receiver at their best.
All right, fair enough. The Raiders we'll touch on real quick. Derek Carr, I think, is a back-end QB1, high-end QB2 that is great for as your second quarterback in a super flex league. I think you're kind of chancing it. He'll have some good weeks and bad weeks if you have him for fantasy. I think he's been QB 12 each of the last few years or somewhere around there.
I got him QB 10 this year.
Yeah, so back end QB right there. As far as the running game, we kind of touched on it a little bit. It's Amir White, exciting rookie in that room, but Josh Jacobs should have the lion's share of the work. They did bring in Devonta Adams, which does bring a question here to what's going to happen to Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow, I'm probably, unless his ADP falls significantly, I'm probably not going to have too many shares of. I just don't think behind Darren Waller and Devonta Adams, a team that I don't think can feature 3 wide receivers that are fantasy relevant, 3 pass catchers. I don't think I'm going to love having Renfrow, maybe other than as a bench receiver that if someone happens to get hurt, I would put him in. I don't know if you guys are higher on Renfrow than that, but
I'm a little higher on them. I think they can absolutely feature 3 wide receivers. They'll have Renfrow. I kind of look at him as like a Wes Welker type. They obviously just paid him with the extension. They value what he brings. He's just a great route runner who has sure hands. And Devonta Adams is going to do Devonta Adams things. And then I think that his presence actually frees up Darren Waller more. You kind of look at what Hill did for Kelsey.
You're talking about Devonta Adams.
Yeah. Devonta Adams. I think Devonta Adams can do that for Darren Waller. So I'm pretty high on this offense, and that's why I like Derek Carr so much this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to have great pass catchers. They're going to have to score a lot of points to keep up with these other 3 teams in the division. I have Devonta Adams as my wide receiver 4. I don't know where you guys have him. I have him just behind the elite top 3 of Cup.
I have him. Let's see. Devonta Adams. I have him at wide receiver 5.
So I have Cup. Well, right now my order is Jefferson, Cup, and Chase, and then Adams. Who else do you have above him, Brad?
I have Cup 1, Diggs 2, Chase 3, Jefferson 4.
Okay, so I have Diggs at 5. So that's the difference in that. Obviously, the order. But what about you, Doc?
So I have for me Tyreek 1, Jefferson 2, Jamar Chase 3, Diggs 4, Cup. I have Adams 6.
Interesting. I mean,
so we're pretty much all in the same area. We got him in that 4 through 6 range.
And this isn't. I mean, obviously, this isn't talent wise, but just from a fantasy perspective.
I'm sure Johnny has him at 1. So
let's see. I actually have it up right now. I can see Johnny has Devonta Adams at 4.
Oh, okay. So the non-Raiders bias that we both have him at number 4. Me and Johnny have been agreeing a lot lately, so that's
I don't like that.
Not usually don't do that. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up the AFC West. I think we were able to get a lot of players in just about 35 minutes. So If you guys are enjoying these shorter team preview breakdowns, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. We just hit 2.08 on the channel, which is a nice mark for us. And
2.08 thousand.
yes, 2.08 thousand. Thank you, Brad. That's
Whoa, I thought it was 2.08 million.
Almost.
if only. So if you guys are enjoying it, please, if you're watching our videos consistently and you're not subscribed, every subscription helps. Every like helps the YouTube algorithm, and a comment also if you're enjoying the content. If you're on the podcast feed, please make sure you're subscribed there. And if you are enjoying what we're hearing, then just leave us a review and tell us how smooth Brad's voice is, or how much you like Doc's big old headphones, or something in that will be great for a review there. But that's gonna be it. Is anything you guys want to plug? A video that you're dropped, or something you're getting ready to do, Brad?
Yeah. Definitely check us out on the YouTube channel. I'm always dropping some football player profiler videos, and I'll also have the best free agent for each NBA team dropping before the free agency opens later this month. And then on top of that, I'm going to start ramping up for fantraxhq.com, dropping more football articles, and yeah, you'll be able to catch us.
Yeah, and Doc just dropped a Saquon Barkley video last week, and I know we'll be dropping a lot of great content over the next coming weeks and months. So
yeah, for sure. Hopefully you've got some players lined up for some interviews. Go and check out some playlists we have on the channel as well. And, definitely follow the account. I'm the one that runs AAA Fantasy. So, love interacting with people that support us.
We'll have to see. Have we checked if Triple Play Fantasy is still taken? I know we did that a long time. If it's not, we could still change our.
At this point, we got to keep what we have.
Yeah, we got to.
We're almost at 7,000 followers, man. Eric's been running it.
That's true. But again, appreciate you guys, and you all know we'll be back next week. So for Brad, for Doc, I'm Demendy. We're gonna make like a bread truck, and we're gonna haul these buns. Catch y'all